My wife's shocking affair caught red-handed in our home. They say your home is your sanctuary, right? The one place you're supposed to feel safe, secure, loved. Well, our home became a crime scene. Not with flashing lights and yellow tape, no. This was a crime scene of the heart, where trust wasn't just broken, it was shattered. It felt like it was murdered. You think you know someone, you build your whole life and your world around them. And then, just like that, you realize that the world was a complete illusion and you've been living with a total stranger. What I'm about to tell you isn't easy to share. It's raw, it's incredibly painful, and it's the story of how my marriage didn't just die. It felt like it was executed right in our bedroom. Before that day, if you'd asked me about my marriage to Annie, I'd have said it was good, pretty solid. 15 years. We'd built a life, you know? The house, shared dreams, all those inside jokes that no one else would ever get. We had our routines, our comfortable silences, and Sunday morning coffees. We'd celebrated anniversaries, we'd weathered storms together, or so I thought. And I truly believed we were both building towards the same future. Of course, no marriage is perfect. We had disagreements, sure. The occasional unspoken tension you could cut with a knife. The usual stresses from work and life that sometimes made us feel more like roommates than lovers. However, I never questioned her loyalty. Never. The thought of her, of Annie, cheating, it wasn't even in the realm of possibility. It was laughable, honestly. If anything, I was the one who worried I wasn't exciting enough that I'd let the spark fade. But Annie, she was my rock, the one constant in my life. Or so I believed, with every part of me. We just had our 15th anniversary a few months before. A quiet dinner, a heartfelt card from her that I still have, ironically tucked away somewhere. It talked about love, about forever. Looking back now, it's like digging through the wreckage of a plane crash, desperately searching for the black box, trying to pinpoint the exact moment everything went catastrophically wrong. Were there signs I missed? Tiny little cracks in the foundation I was too blind, or maybe just too complacent to see? Maybe. Hindsight, though, it's a cruel teacher, shining a light on everything you missed. But on that particular Tuesday, as I drove home from a work trip I'd cut short to surprise her, all I was thinking about was how good it would be to sleep in my bed next to my wife. The irony isn't lost on me. It's a bitter pill, and I'm still trying to swallow it. That bed, our bed, was about to become the stage for the most devastating performance of my entire life. I'd been away for 3 days, a conference that was, let's be honest, mind-numbingly dull. I'd managed to wrap up my presentation early, and the thought of surprising Annie and spending an extra evening together was just too tempting. I didn't call. I wanted to see the look on her face. I remember smiling to myself as I pulled into the driveway, picturing a quiet dinner, perhaps a movie, just the two of us. The house was quiet. That wasn't unusual for a Tuesday afternoon. She might have been reading or out in the garden. I let myself in, the familiar click of the lock echoing a bit. "Annie?" I called out, dropping my bag by the door. Silence, and then a little prickle of something. Not an alarm, not yet. More just this sense that the house felt different, emptier than it should have been. I walked through the living room into the kitchen, a half-empty glass of water on the counter. Normal. Then I heard it. A sound from upstairs, from our bedroom. A muffled laugh? My heart did this weird little flip. It wasn't just Annie's laugh. There was another tone, deeper. For a split second, my mind just scrambled, trying to find a rational explanation. A friend over? Repairman? But the sound intimate, way too intimate. I started towards the stairs, this cold dread seeping into my bones, making my steps feel heavy as if I were wading through thick water. Every creak of the floorboards under my feet sounded deafening in the sudden silence that had fallen again. As I reached the landing, I could hear voices more clearly, whispers. Her voice was soft, and then his, a low murmur. That dread was a full-blown sickness in my stomach by then. My hand was shaking as I reached for the doorknob of our bedroom. Our bedroom. I didn't knock. I didn't call out her name again. Some primal instinct just took over. I just turned the knob and pushed the door open. That image, it's burned into my memory, seared onto the inside of my eyelids. You know, like when a flashbulb goes off? It's the kind of moment that just fractures your life into a before and an after. Annie and him in our bed. The bed we'd picked out together. The bed where we'd loved and argued and dreamt. The shock was like a physical blow. It knocked the air out of my lungs. For a split second, just one pure, unbelievable second, my brain just couldn't process it. It refused to. It was like a scene from some terrible cliched movie. Except it wasn't a movie. It was my life. He scrambled with pure panic on his face, and Annie, her eyes met mine. I saw shock, guilt, and then God, this was horrifying. A flicker of something else. Defiance, maybe fear? I don't know. It all seemed to happen in slow motion, but also all at once. The tangled sheets, the clothes were discarded on the floor, the sheer, unadulterated betrayal hanging in the air so thick I could almost taste it. I don't remember what I said first, or if I even said anything. I think some sound came out of me, something inhuman, just raw agony. The world tilted. The colors seemed too bright and the sounds were way too loud. The man, our neighbor, James, was fumbling for his trousers, stammering apologies that meant absolutely nothing, just noise in the roaring inferno that had just incinerated my world. Annie sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest, her face white. This wasn't some Hollywood confrontation with dramatic speeches. No, it was messy. Ugly, broken sentences, pure, raw emotion. I remember hearing the blood pounding in my ears, a tremor in my hands I couldn't control. That feeling like the world just dropping out from under your feet, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. That room, our sanctuary, had been violated and desecrated. And a part of me just shattered in that moment, a part I'm still trying to piece back together. The minutes that followed were just a blur of raw, jagged emotions. Disbelief hit first. This couldn't be real, right? This kind of thing doesn't happen. Not to us, not in our home. Then came the anger, this white-hot rage that felt like it would consume me. I wanted to break something, to scream until my lungs gave out. I remember looking at James, this guy I shared drinks on occasional weekends with in my sacred space, and feeling this almost primal urge to physically throw him out, to just erase him. Thankfully, he left quickly. Wouldn't even look at me. Just muttered something about it being a mistake, as if this were like spilling coffee, not demolishing a 15-year marriage. Once he was gone, the silence crashed down again. Still, this time it was heavy, suffocating, filled with everything unspoken and unspeakable. Annie tried to talk. Excuses, explanations, apologies, they all just blurred into this meaningless drone in my ears. All I heard were these pathetic phrases like, "It just happened," "I didn't mean for you to find out like this," and "I've been unhappy." Each word was like another twist of the knife. Unhappy? Really? When were you planning on sharing that? Before or after you invited another man into our bed? The humiliation was a physical ache, this burning shame that just spread through me. How long had this been going on? Our neighbor? Were there others? The questions just swirled, each one more painful than the last. I couldn't look at her. Not really. The woman I married, the person I thought I knew. She was gone. Replaced by this stranger who just casually, cruelly detonated our life. The trust, the very foundation of our relationship, had been pulverized. I felt this profound sense of loss, not just for my wife, but for my past, my present, and my future. It was like grieving a death, except the person was still standing right there in front of me. That first night I didn't sleep in our bed. I couldn't. I ended up on the sofa just staring at the ceiling, that scene replaying in my mind on an endless, torturous loop. Every shadow, every creak of the house seemed to mock me. The emotional fallout was immediate and devastating. I felt like I was adrift in a storm, no anchor, no land in sight. Eventually, the shock started to wear off, and this deep, aching sadness settled in, a hollow feeling in my chest that just got bigger and bigger. Decisions had to be made, but my mind was too fractured to think clearly. The only thing I knew for sure was that nothing would ever be the same again. Our home, my sanctuary, had been violated. That feeling of safety, gone, replaced by this gnawing insecurity and pain so raw I thought it would break me. Those first few days, then weeks, they were just a descent into my private hell. The initial shock and rage slowly morphed into this persistent, gnawing ache. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. When it did come, it was filled with nightmares, constant replays of that horrific discovery. The food tasted like cardboard. The house, once my comfort, felt tainted. Every room held a memory that was now warped and painful. Our bedroom, I couldn't even go in there. It felt contaminated. The sense of violation was just overwhelming. Conversations with Annie, when they occurred, were stilted and incredibly painful. There were tears, accusations, and more excuses that just felt hollow. She talked about feeling lonely and disconnected, reasons that, okay, maybe had some truth to them on their own, but as excuses for this, they felt like daggers. It became painfully clear that the marriage, as I knew it, was over. The trust wasn't just broken, it was annihilated. How could I ever look at her the same way? The process of separating was brutal. Untangling 15 years of a shared life is like trying to perform surgery on yourself without any anesthesia. Lawyers, paperwork, dividing possessions that once symbolized our unity, every single step was a fresh wave of grief and anger. Friends started taking sides and our family offered advice, well-meaning, sure, but not always helpful. And the world just kept spinning outside, totally oblivious to the personal apocalypse I was living through. There was also the public side of it, however small. We weren't celebrities, but in our circle, the news, when it eventually trickled out, caused ripples. The shame of it all, that feeling of being judged, even pitied, that was another layer of pain. I became more withdrawn and isolated because it was just easier than facing the questions and the sympathetic looks. The emotional and mental health toll was immense. There were days I could barely function, just consumed by sadness, anger, and this bewildering sense of loss. It felt like a part of my identity had been stolen. Who was I if not Annie's husband? I started to realize that healing wasn't going to be some straight line. It was going to be messy, painful, filled with good days and terrible days. A slow crawl out of the dark. I learned that infidelity isn't just about sex. It's about the deceit, the disrespect, and the complete shattering of a shared reality. If you've ever experienced something like this, or are grappling with betrayal in your own life, please know that you're not alone. If you feel comfortable, share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Sometimes, just knowing others understand can make a small difference. And if this story resonates with you, consider subscribing for more reflections on navigating life's toughest challenges. When something this devastating happens, it forces you to look at everything differently. And amidst the wreckage of my marriage, there were some hard-won lessons. It's cold comfort, I guess, but you do try to find some meaning in all that pain. The first, and probably the most brutal lesson, was about trust. Trust is so fragile, so easily broken, and incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to fully rebuild once it's been shattered like that. I learned that you can think you know someone inside and out, share years of your life with them, and still be completely blindsided. It taught me how important it is not to assume trust is there, but to actively nurture it. And also, crucially, to trust my gut. Looking back, yeah, there were subtle shifts. Tiny red flags I brushed off because, honestly, the alternative was just too painful to consider. Never again. I learned about self-worth. When the person who's supposed to love you more than anything betrays you like that, it's so easy to turn it inward. To think you weren't enough. But her choices? They were about her. Her issues, her failings. Not mine. Rebuilding my self-esteem has been a journey, learning to separate my worth from what someone else did. I learned about the importance of genuine communication. Not just the how was your day stuff, but the tough talks, the ones about what you need, what you want, what's not working. Maybe if we'd had more of those, things would have been different. Or not. However, the silence, the unspoken problems, clearly created a space where resentment and secrets could flourish. I also learned about resilience. There were moments when I honestly thought this pain would break me and that I'd never recover. But humans are surprisingly resilient. The pain doesn't just magically disappear, but it does change. It becomes part of your story, like a scar. A reminder of what you survived. The journey through all that grief, anger, and eventual acceptance is proof of an inner strength I didn't even know I had. And finally, I learned that sometimes the end of one thing, even something you cherish, can be the painful, necessary beginning of something new. A new understanding of who I am, stronger boundaries, and yeah, eventually, a new path forward. It's not a lesson I would have chosen, not in a million years, but it's one I carry with me every single day. That perfect marriage I thought I had, it wasn't real. And admitting that, as much as it hurt, was a huge step in actually starting to heal. Walking in on my wife with another man in our own home was a betrayal that cut right to the core, shattering my world and forcing me to face a reality I never ever imagined. The drama, the fallout, it changes you, right down to your core. But if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's that even in those deepest, darkest moments, when your heart is shattered, there is a way forward. It's not easy and it's not quick, but there is life after infidelity. There is healing, and there is hope for a future where trust, maybe a more cautious, more discerning trust, can exist again. My story started with this devastating cheating scandal, but it's slowly becoming a survival story about rediscovering who I am. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe.